Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with,
Chris Doyle from Goodman Games. Pleasure to be with you, Manny.
as always, same here, Dungeon Denizens. That's what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be on Kickstarter very, very shortly. So this is a collection of 500 plus new monsters,
Yes.
and although I love to see DCC's take on 5e monsters and making their own. I'm also excited that DCC is making their own because DCC doesn't really have their own monster manual per se, not officially. What I love about DCC is that they really want the game master, maybe with some
Yes.
inspiration from the players, to make their own creature. And I love that because the game never feels the same twice. If I may ask, what was the inspiration behind this book? Where did the idea for this come from?
Okay, so this is a project that we've literally been working on for about 3 years, actually, when we first started conceptualizing it. And originally it was just a 5e monster book because, like you said, there's never been a DCC monster book. And actually, Joe, the creator of DCC RPG, has always been like, no, there shouldn't be necessarily a DCC monster book because of exactly what you just said. We want the game masters to create their own crazy designs and everything. However, over the years, the fans have actually asked for it. So for the DCC, so when we first started this process, it was going to be a 5e book, and our first thought was, we were like, there's a lot of monster books out in the market, and it's like, so how can we create one that's going to be different than everybody else? So the first kind of concept that we came up with was 500 monsters for 5e. That sounds amazing. And we kind of ran with that until afterwards, the part I was like, oh my gosh, now I need to come up with 500 monsters, which is the hard part. Exciting, but the hard part. So that's kind of how it started. And then as the project kind of was steamrolling along, we were like, we should probably create a DCC version of this book. And unfortunately, that was later in the process. So we actually created the 5e stats first and then converted them over to DCC. Probably not the most efficient way to do things. Again, that's probably what kind of slowed down the release of this book a little bit. But so essentially, we're producing two huge monster books, and that's why it's kind of taken us so much time. When I came on with the company full time back in 2020, this was something where we were like, a monster book, we can do this. We really can't do this all with freelancers. It's just there's just too many moving parts for a project this size. And then again, we're doing it twice. So that's kind of why it's taken us a long amount of time.
How new are these monsters per se? Are they like a compilation of maybe different things from different like stories and adventures from DCC's past? Or if not, then where? I mean, 500 monsters. Wow. Where did you guys go for inspiration?
Yeah, so we've pulled these monsters from all over the place. Some of them are from our old books, back even going back to like the third edition days. Some of them were pulled from extra DCC monsters that we had. For example, in some of the dice tubes that we release, we always put like a monster or something inside one of those dice tubes. So we took a few of those and converted them over to 5e for that. We did an open call for 5e designers back in late 2020. And the first assignment that we gave them was design monsters. So, and it's like a perfect first assignment, basically. So we got 13 professional freelancers out of that open call. We received over 100 responses from that open call. We narrowed it down to 13, and the first assignment that the 13 had were design monsters. And we had probably 6 to 10 monsters were designed from each of those authors alone. So that gave us 100 plus monsters right there. I developed a bunch of them. Mike Curtis, our lead on the DCC RPG side, developed a bunch of them. And then we have a couple of other regular freelancers that folks will recognize the name: Bob Brinkman, Rick Maffei, and they also contributed some. So yeah, so I didn't sit down and create 500 monsters because I would run out of ideas probably after 50. So basically, we looked far and wide for these monsters, and really feel that we got like a really exciting number of them, even though there is 500 of them.
Hmm. Let's talk about the art real fast because I feel like when it comes to monster manuals or similar books like that, art is key because it doesn't matter
Yes,
how well you describe the creature. Players will ask, "Well, do you have a picture?" um,
exactly.
so, and I heard your Twitch stream about this book, and you mentioned I heard the name of Errol Otis involved. Can you talk about the art team behind
Yeah.
this?
Sure. So we have, first of all, we have three completely different covers for the book. One of them is right over my shoulder there. That's the 5e version of the book with cover art by David Griffith. And he's the artist that has done most of the covers for our small modules, our thin FEF modules, the fifth edition fantasy modules. So folks are going to be very familiar with his style. San Julian is the old school artist that has done stuff back in the 70s for Conan novels and whatnot. He has actually done the cover art for the DCC version of the book. And then finally, we had Errol Otis and folks from First Edition D&D will probably recognize that name, do a cover art for us, and we had him actually do the style of the old monster manual, where there's like some sky, there's some land, and then there's some dungeon underneath, and then there's monsters, kind of a collection of monsters on all different levels, and kind of his take on what that'd be for a little bit of a modern thing. And we're using him for the cover of one of the other products that's going to be available in this Kickstarter called our two-page Dungeon Delves. So we have three different cover arts, and folks always want like, oh, I'm buying this version, but I want that art. So we're actually going to make available dust jackets with all the different version art on it, so people can kind of swap whatever they want, or they can collect all of them if they want. Instead of buying a whole nother book just to get a different cover, now you can just get a dust jacket and put on whichever one prefer art that you actually would prefer to do. And then as far as the interior art goes, all brand new full color art. Now, most monster books are full color these days, but most Goodman games, I don't think any Goodman Games products are full color. So this is different for us. And in commissioning 500 plus pieces of full color art for all of the monsters, that's another reason why this is taking so long. We deal only with physical media art. We don't do we do use artists that do things on the computer, but for the most part, our color artists, they are creating specifically this art on physical media. So all of this artwork actually exists, and we have some really exciting ways that we're going to be utilizing this art in some of the add-ons that you can get for the Kickstarter. So very excited about the art, and the best part of my job is opening up my emails and approving 10 or so pieces of artwork that comes in, final artwork and everything, and getting to look at some of the things I created, literally months or years ago, and finally seeing it, what it looks like, and being just out in awe of it.
Wow. So in color, over 500 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Is it as someone that's a little bit involved in the printing process of books, was that difficult to not to manage, I guess difficult to talk to the printers about to make sure that the quality of it is not harmed?
Yeah, so I mean, if folks of us that are familiar, we do some crazy things printing wise with our different covers and whatnot. There's almost nothing. We're getting into printing crazy foil sides. We're doing foil treatments on the edges of our boxes. We've done box sets, we've done soft covers, we've done limited edition books. We've done the huge Kickstarter Judges Guilds books that are like the size of a coffee table. We use a variety of different printers for our different specs. And one of the other really interesting things about this project, in addition to those awesome color art pieces, is we have a limited edition. It's like a reptile skin cover. It feels like a monster skin cover. It's called Pythor. It's a faux reptile skin treatment, and we have Doug Kovacs is actually making a design for the art, but that will be limited edition, only available in during the Kickstarter. So that will be yet another edition. And again, we've worked with our printer. We've already spec'd all these things out, so we know exactly what it's going to take. And let's just say our printers that we work with, they like it when we give them a call and we come, because we're always trying to push things and try to do things a little bit differently and crazy, especially when it comes to massive books like this on Kickstarter. And let's be honest, Kickstarter is really the place for these kind of products. Crazy ones like, it'd be nuts to put out a 500 monster book probably through traditional channels, but doing it on Kickstarter, it makes a lot of sense. So that's where we're at.
And speaking of add-ons, the Kickstarter campaign, probably one of my favorite things about the DCC Kickstarter campaigns is that they're always fun to see what stretch goals you have and the add-ons. Could you share a little bit about that?
Certainly. So first of all, I want to get out there that if you pledge for the Kickstarter, you're going to get a monster exclusive that the retail copies will not get. So if you
Hmm.
back this Kickstarter, you're getting that, and that monster is actually going to be what's called tipped in. It's actually going to be in the book as its own separate page.
Hmm.
Um, but if you back within the first 48 hours, you're actually going to get another monster on top of it that's not going to be available anywhere else. So we're definitely trying to encourage people to get the Kickstarter off to a great start, because once we get a lot of backers involved, we're going to get that community thing going. And I'm going to get to that a little bit on some of the community activities that we have planned for this moving along. So you've got that. If you purchase a physical book in either 5e or DCC version, you're going to get the PDF for free. So that's a great deal. You don't have to pay extra for the PDF. So some of the additional things that are going to be available as I already mentioned, this two-page Dungeon Delves book. This is going to be a softcover book with that cover art from Errol Otis. And it's probably going to be around 48 pages. It might get bigger based on some stretch goals down the road. But essentially, this is going to be a collection of monster lairs that are going to be 2 pages long, one piece of art, one map, and then 3 to 5 encounters, if you will. And all the monsters will be pulled from the Dungeon Denizens book or some of the core monsters. So there will be no statistics in here. You will need the Dungeon Denizens to actually utilize this book. And the book is actually going to be, we're going to kind of write it generically so that it's not going to be one book for 5e and one book for DCC. It's going to say stuff like make an easy difficulty check to climb the wall. And then we're going to have some notes in the beginning of the book saying in DCC, easy means, DC 10. In 5e, easy means DC 15. And then, give some recommendations on how to do that. So we've never done one of those before, so we're really excited about that book. So that's awesome. I mentioned earlier about trying to utilize the art. Since we're making all this art, trying to get the art out there in a bunch of different ways. We've never done this before, but we're actually creating physical cardstock pawns that are going to come. They're going to be cardboard punch outs, just like you get like from a board game, thick cardboard. And you're going to be able to use that. We're going to have that available for all 500 creatures, which is nuts.
Wow.
So it's going to be, honestly, when you pile all those cardboard sheets together, it's probably going to be over 3 inches of cardboard punch out things, probably like 40 sheets or so. But those are going to be available for use at your game table, front and back, with that color art from all the monsters in the book, which is amazing. Similar to that, if you prefer to play online on one of the various VTT platforms, we will have VTT token packs available. At this point, just the tokens. So you're basically just buying the art packs, basically of all 500 monsters that you can use and drop right into your VTT games. And then we've got a bunch of other cool things. We've got specific dice for this, a gray set of dice to kind of simulate the dungeon, both available in seven-piece sets for the 5e crowd and 14-piece sets, the weird funky dice for DCC. And if folks are familiar with our other little dice tubes, we know we always put some content in there as well. So there'll be some bonus content in there as well. We are doing a custom GM screen for both the 5e version and the DCC version. The 5e version will have art on the outside, and on the inside, it's going to include a lot of those tables that are at the back of the book that, organize the monsters by CR, by terrain, by type, whatever we can fit on the inside of that book with 500 monsters, we're going to do that. For the DCC side, this is something you alluded to earlier on how monsters in DCC are kind of funky and you kind of make them a little bit differently. Well, that's what we're going to put content on the GM screen for the DCC side. We're going to add those funky random tables with like humanoids that explode when you hit them and things like that. Also, we're thinking about putting on some new crit tables on there for maybe beasts or animals. Basically things to make your game a little bit more DCC. Make the monsters, even though they're in DCC stats already, make them feel a little bit more DCC, and that GM screen is going to help you out with that. And we got a t-shirt available, of course, because everybody loves t-shirts these days, with a special t-shirt designed with some of the San Julian art created. So and the dust jackets that I mentioned earlier, those will also be there. So that's all the add-ons. That's not even counting
Hmm.
the stretch goals, which I'm sure you want to hear about stretch goals
Oh yes,
next.
please, please. I'm curious. You definitely
Okay.
have my attention.
Yes. So for stretch goals, as I mentioned earlier, what was really a selling point for this book was 500 monsters for 5e. But Manny, know what sounds even better than 500 monsters for 5e? I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
555 monsters for 5e sounds even better.
Oh
So
wow.
the first batch of stretch goals is 55 additional monsters that will be in the book. We're probably going to put them in an appendix in the book in the back. And again, you will not get these if you buy this book in retail later. I mean, 55 additional monsters with all new art and everything. And we've got them. They're going to release at various times, and we got the preview art of all of them. We're going to be available as we're going along. So that's pretty fascinating. The other really exciting Kickstarter stretch goal that we have is we are going to invite the backers to create their own monsters. So this is going to be based on the number of backers that we get. So the more backers we get, the more slots we're going to make available. Up to 20 slots available. So we will actually take 20 of the existing monsters and kind of put them to the side and make room for up to 20 backer created monsters. And then after the Kickstarter ends, we're going to reach out to all the backers and we're going to give them the rules and the instructions on how they create a creature. They can create it for DCC or 5e, and then whichever ones we accept, and we'll accept whichever ones are better. So if we get 18 better DCC monsters and only 2 5e monsters, that's fine. We'll take those statistics and send them to our in-house team, and we'll convert them over. So you will get, no one's going to not get monsters out of that deal.
Hmm.
If we get the monsters for one system, you're going to get them for the other system. So that is really exciting, and that's part of that engaging with the community, and make them feel really part of it. And we're hoping that they're going to brainstorm a bunch of things during the Kickstarter and have a lot of back and forth on what we're looking for, what we're not looking for, and how to go about doing that. And I'll be honest with you, Manny, we're doing this for slightly selfish reasons. We are getting bigger and we need more writers. This is an opportunity for us to hopefully mine some additional talent out there. And hopefully we're gonna make some connections with some really great monster designers. And then hopefully bring them in the fold and have them do again. Because if everything goes well, maybe there'll be a Dungeon Denizens 2 sometime down the road, and we're gonna need even more people to create monsters. So
Oh wow.
I know, exciting, huh?
And I love that you're sticking to the theme of five, for
Yes.
this.
Yep, yep,
That's
yep,
really
yep.
great. So
So
so speaking of themes, something I wanted to ask you. When it comes to the philosophy of monsters and fear, like so when your team was developing monsters, was there a theme? How does DCC define monster per se?
yeah, yeah. So really, our designers were pretty much open. Like I said, we did pull some monsters from some of the existing books that we had. So that was kind of a starting point, if you will. But all of them, we went through this detailed process to really make the monsters better. So it started with the designer designing the monster. Then it went off to our editing team, and our editing team of 3 5e editors, and then I think we had 3 or 4 DCC editors. They were under instructions to make suggestions to make the monsters better. We would get a lot of monsters that being about, this one kind of seems like it seems like an orc with a little more hit points or something like that. So we would be like, well, okay, what would make that monster sing? What would make that monster better? So our editors actually made a lot of recommendations, and then those monsters would come back to me. I got to touch all of those monsters and look at them and look at those some of the suggestions. Now, some of the mechanical things that to bring things up to CR or to make sure the CR worked, the editors handled that on their own. But sometimes they would say like, oh, hey, this thing needs additional lore, or this thing needs a different attack, or the attacks need to be worked out differently, or it needs to be play tested so we can test to make sure it works out better. That's where I kind of came in, and I worked on them a little bit more, and then they went back to the editors again. And then Wizards of the Coast did this awesome thing where they changed their monster stats about halfway through this when they released their monsters in the multiverse back in, I think that was 2022, I think early 2022.
Hmm.
That gave us an opportunity to go back and go into all 500 monsters again and kind of look at them again and rebalance them again, and then look in and make some further tweaks. So these monsters really for 2 years have been kind of under, I won't say a constant development, but they've gone through a lot of different tweaks. So even to the point where if you have one of our old 5e adventures or one of our DCC adventures that one of these monsters might have been pulled out of, there's probably still significant changes in it because we wanted to make it cooler. We wanted to make it better, more exciting at the table. That was our goal at the end of the day.
Hmm. And if I may ask, is there any monster here that may what's probably one monster in here that you would not want to face in the dark?
Days in the Dark. Okay. That's a great question. I didn't think about that. Wow, there's so many. I'm gonna bring up probably my favorite one. And when they encountered it when we were playtesting this, it actually was not in the dark, but we have a series of clockwork constructs created by gnomes. And the gnomes were, sometimes they were lazy and they kind of created clockworks to do different things for them. And one of the gnome inventors actually created a clockwork facsimile, if you will, of a gelatinous cube. So imagine a 10-foot mechanical clockwork cube that's like a Roomba that goes around your dungeon and cleans things up. And it's actually quite frightening because you see this array of buzz saws and grabbers and all kinds of things, but it's kind of open and all that. So if you see it, you're probably pretty scared about it. And in our playtest, it was amazing. Our bold lizard folk fighter just strode right up to the thing and was just like, I'm gonna start going ham on this with my warhammer, not realizing that the thing about a gelatinous cube is they've got that envelop ability where they can actually move onto your space, and the clockwork cube can do that too, but the clockwork also has these grabbers that it can actually grab you and pull you into its array and then grind you up. And let me tell you, this was the big beefy fighter, and the big beefy fighter needed to be extracted from the clockwork cube because it wasn't going well for him at all. So again, that would be pretty scary if that was in absolute darkness and you didn't know what was going on and you heard this mechanical whirring and then all of a sudden you were pulled into these gears and you started getting grinded alive. I think that'd be pretty terrifying.
Oh my gosh, that's
And that's an example of one. I believe one of our editors actually created that because he was editing the clockwork constructs and that idea just came to him and he was like, hey, can I add a monster to the book? And I said, by all means you can. We need 500 of them, go for it. And that was kind of how he developed all that and it came out great, and I love that design.
wow. That's wow. That sounds amazing. Well, Dungeon Denizens. This will be out the end of February on Kickstarter. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to
You're welcome.
talking to us about this, and to our viewers. Be safe out there. Watch out for the dark. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, bye everybody.